Hi, my name is Winston Smith, and this is my Draw My Life. There isn't a whole lot from my childhood that I can recall, but there are bits and pieces. I remember living in a very small house, and my dad had passed away or disappeared, so he's not going to be in this Draw My Life. I lived with my mother and my younger sister, and life was okay, but it could have been better. The times were really hard, and we were finding it hard to survive. You see, we had very little food, and the food we had, I wanted the majority of it. I was never really happy with the amount I got, and Mother always gave us our fair share, but I still wanted more. I was a horrible child and very mean to my family, and there's really only one time I can fully remember that we had laughed and had fun. It was a rainy day, and Mother had got out and bought a board game. It was Chutes and Ladders, and it was really fun. It was one of the only times I remembered that we had laughed and played for quite a while. It was one of the only times we were ever happy. Then came the chocolate rations. Mother had handed us each of our pieces, but they weren't very big, and I really wanted more because, of course, I was a very horrible child and was greedy. So I took my sisters and I ran out of the house. I don't know what compelled me to run out of the house, but I never looked back. And that evening, when I finally did decide to come back, they had disappeared. They were gone. And even to this day, I still feel that I had killed them. The rest of my childhood, I can't remember. And after all that, all I know is that I worked in the news department of the Ministry of Plenty, and that I am 35 years old. The job wasn't bad, but it wasn't good either. My job was to take wrong pieces of information, from books and magazines, and make them true. The work itself wasn't bad, I just never believed what I wrote, and I'm pretty sure that O'Brien, one of my comrades, didn't also. There was this one female who I believed worked in the fiction department. I didn't know her name at the time, but she had dark hair and wore a red sash around her waist. It was a sign of the Junior Anti-Sex League. When I saw that sash around her waist, it reminded me of how earlier, during one of the 2 minutes hate, that I wanted to beat her and rape her. It also made me think that she might be a spy for the party. Well, one day I was minding my own business and I was walking down the corridor. I looked up to see that she was walking the opposite way. When I looked closer, she had a sling on her arm. She must have heard it while she was doing her work. And, of course, I couldn't help but stare a little bit because, who wouldn't stare? But I guess I might have stared too hard because she ended up falling flat on her frickin' face. I decided to go ahead and help her up because, that would be a very nice thing for a person to do, considering she was one of my comrades. And when I did, she very quietly and very sneakily slipped a note into my hand. I didn't want to open it because it was right in front of a telescreen, so I waited until I was alone to do so. And when I did, it read, "I love you." To say that I was shocked was an understatement. Earlier I thought I wanted to kill her, rape her even. To find out, her name was Julia, and when we finally decided to meet up after I got the nerve to talk to her, we did it for the first time. But it wasn't the last time. But it wasn't as often as we wanted it to be. We decided to find a place inside the city. I had met this shopkeeper named Charrington, who had an extra room upstairs above his shop. There was no telescreen and an old bed that would do for the two of us. One day while I was at work and walking in the corridor again, O'Brien had pulled me aside, right in front of a telescreen. He gave me his address on a slip of paper and told me to come to his house to pick it up. It was a brand new Newspeak diary, he said. At first, I had my suspicions, but then I realized he must be with the Brotherhood. So, of course, I got excited. So, of course, I decided to go tell Julia, and of course, we decided that we would arrive at his house together of arriving at separate times, but of course, we weren't used to having to sneak around together. It turns out I was right. O'Brien was part of it, and he let us in, and we left at different times. We stayed in the shop until it happened. While we were hanging out that one evening, the thought police rushed in around us, telling us not to move. And of course we were scared. But I was more a little angry because we didn't know who turned us in. I turned around at someone who was coming up the stairs and realized it was Mr. Charrington, who was a part of the thought police. We were taken to the Ministry of Love and obviously were separated. My cell was cold, with only a sliver of wood stretching out from the wall for me to sleep on. And if I happened to make any movements, they yelled at me from the telescreen to stop and sit up straight. The torture they put me through was painful, yet tolerable to some degree, and the one who administered mine was O'Brien himself. Turns out, he faked being a member of the Brotherhood and was actually the lead member of the Ministry of Love, who relished in the betrayal of myself and Julia. Some of the torture was asking me questions and electrocuting me whenever one of my answers wasn't satisfactory. He made me think that 4 fingers was 5. One day, when they were beginning to believe I wasn't a lost cause to their government, I had shouted out that I loved Miss Julia in my sleep. That was a huge mistake, and I heard the guards coming before they even entered the room. O'Brien was one of them, and he said I was going to room 101, of which I did not know what was in there. But when I came in, I saw that it was my worst fear. Rats. All I could see was the fencing mask-like device connected to the cage, and it wasn't very long before I yelled and screamed for them to do it to Julia, not to me. I had betrayed her. And that was one of the things that we had promised we would never do to each other. And O'Brien seemed to like the fact that I had betrayed her a whole lot. And so now all I do is sit at a bar and just drink victory gin and playing chess. Julia and I never felt the same passion that we had had before. It was over, and I had finally achieved my biggest and most hidden dream I ever had. I loved Big Brother.